I'm your host, not for possession, Narcissa DeVille, and welcome to hell. Oh my god. So, first of all, I just want to say if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much. I am so glad to see you back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And if you're a new subscriber, my name is Narcissa DeVille, and I make videos every week, every Tuesday specifically, talking about Good Omens, and that is something that I'm going to be talking about again today. Currently, I am still in the midst of every other week doing a kind of regular video, and then the next week I do a review of the books. I am on chapter 5, I believe, of the book, or that's what I'm going to be doing next week. But this week is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a video specifically talking about the things that I find cathartic about this show and things that have kind of been very, very important to me and very uplifting to me as a person. And I actually, originally, I had talked about this a little bit in one of my other videos when I was talking about the fact that I do find it very cathartic that the character Aziraphale is, in at least fandom spaces, very appreciated for being a, fat character, as it were. I know, obviously the actor who plays him is not big at all by any means, but the character is meant to be, larger. I think in fan art, he is often portrayed as being, larger, plus size. He loves food. That's kind of his whole arc. And I think in a lot of fanfic as well, you see him being portrayed in this way. And I appreciate that. And, when I originally was talking about that video, I had said that I wanted to make it a standalone video where I discuss all of that and how cathartic I find it and how much it means to me. And so this is that video. This is me kind of talking about it. If I do sound a little bit quiet or kind of less energetic, I am trying to be a little more low-key. It is nearly midnight and my neighbors are just behind this wall, so I don't want to talk too loud just in case they can hear me. But yeah, so I'm very excited about this video. So one of the things I have talked about kind of a lot in all of my conversations about Good Omens, I've talked about this in my whole video that is dedicated to the conversation about queer religious trauma, and it's specifically the topic of the important visibility of queer religious trauma. And I've thought about this a lot, and I think part of the reason, it goes back to one of the topics that I talked about when I first decided I wanted to start making weekly videos back in January of this year. And I started doing my Femme makeup chats, and I was talking about the whole enemies to lovers thing and how I find that so cathartic and I find it so important. And I think this show is definitely an example of that. Even though I don't necessarily believe Crowley and Aziraphale were ever really enemies, I do believe that they have felt that, or at least Aziraphale has felt, that they ought to be enemies, and that is something that he has tried to kind of push Crowley away, because it's we're supposed to be enemies. I think that's something he's very much tried to hold on to. And I think in some ways Crowley does feel that, he should push back as well, not because he doesn't want to, but because, he's taking in that information. He's taking in that kind of he's been rejected by Aziraphale just in friendship for 6,000 years. And then, at the end of season 2, he's rejected in a very big way in a romantic sense. So it's kind of rough. And, for me personally, and something I've talked about is when I was a teenager, I spent such a long time. It's that feeling of clearly something in me is just not lovable and I don't know what it is. And so I relate to this, and I'm trying to harden myself to any kind of feeling whatsoever. And so if I, push myself as this, bitch who has no feelings and is cold-hearted and all these other things that I think, a lot of people tell themselves to protect themselves, then I can't be hurt by my own feelings. And I feel that a lot in how I think Crowley acts. Obviously he hides behind his sunglasses. It's his layer of protection. We see that multiple times when he's upset and he doesn't want anyone else to see that. He's hiding behind that layer. And, you know, I didn't really feel like I had that. I didn't have any kind of like thing that I could hide behind personally, but I had the, you know, emotional sunglasses, if you will, the emotional wall that I hid behind of like, no, I'm mean. I don't like anyone, you know, don't come near me. I have no feelings. You know, all of that bullshit nonsense. And I remember very distinctly, you know, and granted, I am the sort of person, my humor is very sarcastic. That has not changed. But I am the sort of person too that I once had a manager say about me in one of my jobs that, you know, Cissa likes you when she's mean to you. And that was kind of jarring, let's say. I was just like, oh, okay, so I'm that person. And I'm not like, I don't think I'm like super mean in like a serious way, but apparently that was how I was portraying myself. And that is not how people would describe me these days. And it's because it's something that I've worked very hard on. But needless to say, you know, I do relate to Crowley in that way, I think. And that's why I'm very invested in, I think, in this idea of these characters having a happy ending, because I need to believe that it's possible. I need to believe that this is something that can happen. So yeah, this kind of started off in a really dark place, but you know, that's my second point of something that I think is very cathartic but also important when it comes to visibility, where I was talking about how much it's very cathartic to see a character who is in the fandom space, you know, portrayed as bigger and fat. Because that's not something you see a lot. You know, there's many fandoms where I think the common consensus is most characters end up slimmed down regardless of what their description is. And so to see a character for whom his weight and his love of food and his appreciation for life and hedonism and gluttony and all of these things is actually like very much the character, and it's very much what the fans appreciate, and it's something that is included often in fanfic enough to where you can like, you don't have to search hard to find it, is what I'm saying. It's included a lot in fan art. You know, he's always drawn as, you know, bigger, but it's just, it's very like, it's nice, and it's not meant, and you know, he's also older. That's another point in this that I will get to, but I find it very refreshing. I find it very refreshing. And again, it's not something I realized that I needed. It's not something that I even considered that was something that was missing from my, you know, fandom experience before. But when you look around at a lot of the most popular, you know, character couplings, you're gonna find a lot of things in common, not the least of which is that most of the time those two characters are very thin. Most of the time they are conventionally attractive. Most of the time they are white. Most of the time they are maybe a little even muscly, or at least one of them is. Most of the time they are cis. Most of the time, you know, there's all these things, and a lot of the times they're men. And so, you know, it's all of these things. Oh, and I forgot the most important one. They're almost exclusively younger, usually at least in their 20s, sometimes occasionally 30, but usually 20, teens or 20s is kind of the sweet spot for the most popular, you know, fandom pairings, I think, you know, if you consider them all. And I think that's very interesting. And so to see these characters, and I think these, you know, my next point kind of pulls into this. So I'm going to actually go into this point. To see these two characters who, you know, kind of, if we're going based on the actors, obviously the characters themselves are, you know, immortal. But if you're going based on the actors, both of the two main characters in this show are over 50. If you go by season 2 and you include Nina and Maggie, they're also over 50. So the main love interests in this show are all, you know, middle-aged. That's unheard of. And it's so again, it's another thing that adds to a level of catharsis that I didn't expect. I did not anticipate that seeing two middle-aged queer couples in love would end up being something that was so deeply meaningful to me, especially like as someone who, I am in my 30s, my early 30s no less. So I am not middle-aged by any respect. But I think it's refreshing because A, it signifies to younger queer people that they have a future, and it signifies to older queer people that they are seen. And for a long, long time, our community did not have any kind of, queer elders. That's something that was lacking from our community for many, many years now. And we know why. And, it's not something I want to get into in this video for obvious reasons. However, it's very, very devastating. And it's something that only recently we've been able to kind of find more of. And it's not that they weren't there before, they were, those who survived, but it is something that by and large we did not have the level of community that we do today. And so it's extremely beautiful to see, this kind of, appreciation for, a queer couple who, one of them is larger, one of them, they're both older. Those are things that are appreciated that aren't written out of their characters most of the time. There are, of course, stories where they're, younger, one is older and one is younger. That's, that's its own thing. But generally speaking, the stories themselves tend to keep in theme of what we know about these characters. And it's really incredibly refreshing. And it's something that I didn't know that was visibility that I needed to see or that could mean so much to me. It's incredibly, like all these things together, I think are incredibly meaningful and special. And it catches you off guard because you don't realize how necessary it is and how much you want it until you see it and you're like, oh, that's like something that like can be very, very meaningful. I was thinking about like all of the main, like the big name queer stories that we have right now. We do have a lot of them, and a lot of them are period pieces, but a lot of them that are like modern, let's say. There aren't many couples who are over the age of like, I don't know, 25 maybe. I can't think of very many where they are in their 50s. Like, I guess technically Ratched is the only one that comes to mind currently, but then again, that show has been on, like, season 2 has been on hiatus forever. So Netflix, what are we doing here? I miss that show, but that's another one that's a period piece, and that's annoying enough, but that's not the point. The point is, I am very curious to know, does that ring a bell to anyone else? Is there any story that I'm not thinking of that is more modern, that is about adults, that features queer couples who are middle-aged? I know I've been told the L Word and the new L Word do include that. I never got into that. I'm so sorry. It just was not for me. So I don't really know anything about that. And I do believe the new one was canceled already anyway, which, shocker. But what I mean is, in general, it seems to be that most of these stories do feature people in their early 20s, maybe people, if you're lucky, in your 30s. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, I saw recently on Tumblr, Neil Gaiman received an ask from a gay man who had said that they really appreciated how Aziraphale's character gets to be more feminine and just very clearly like this effeminate gay man character. And it's not the butt of the joke ever in the show. It's never like meant to be, disrespectful. He is very much this powerhouse character that everybody loves and everybody respects. And their point was that is very refreshing, but it's also helped them a lot to love themselves, and it's helped them a lot to be able to be more confident in themselves and to appreciate themselves more. And I feel like in terms of visibility, something like that is so often overlooked because for such a long time, any type of portrayal like that of like an effeminate gay man was so very like, over the top dramatic jokes basically. And especially being portrayed by a straight actor, I think there is a fine line when it comes to that sort of thing. Just ask James Corden. But where's the lie? We all know over the years, a lot of those characters, even when they are portrayed by gay men, I think if you look at Jack and Will and Grace, Sean Hayes is a gay actor, but even in that show that was about gay people, written by gay people, he was still kind of the butt of the jokes 9 times out of 10. And he was a character I loved, especially as someone who, up until a decade ago identified as, at least a gay boy. I felt that. I understood that. I deeply, deeply respected that. And I do think watching this show now, it's interesting because obviously, I transitioned many, many years ago. I have not identified as that in quite a long time. But I would say that seeing this kind of character get to be not the butt of the joke, get to be someone who is, again, adored, someone who is, people love and respect, obviously not his peers, but in general, the fans love and respect him, let's put it that way, but also someone who clearly exudes a certain power of his own, who clearly exudes a certain, something about him is just like, it's hard not to respect him as a character and not to adore him as a character. And I have found, much to my surprise, again, it's healing something that I didn't realize needed healing until watching this. I did not realize that there was a part of me that needed to see this sort of thing, needed a character like this to heal a deep-seated thing in me that I kind of assumed after transition would just be like, well, but it's very, very interesting. And to get to see this character portrayed so beautifully and in such a respectful way, again, by a straight actor, it's something that should not be that shocking and should not be that unheard of. And yet it's still kind of rare. Greatly, greatly appreciate Michael Sheen's portrayal as this character. And again, it's one of those things that I didn't realize how much this would mean to me and how cathartic it would be and how much that kind of visibility would heal something. And I think it does speak to the importance of good media and the importance of visibility. We talk all the time about visibility mattering and seeing people and seeing yourself portrayed in media and how important that is. We talk about this all the time. And I think it's easy to point out examples of bad media where the visibility is not there. It's very easy to find pieces of media where the visibility just does not exist. It's very easy to find pieces of media where the visibility, if it does exist, is just bad. But it's often very difficult to find media in which the visibility is not only there, but it's very, very good. And it's more than just, it's things that you don't realize how meaningful it can be. And of course, too, visibility that even has nothing to do with me, but I think is very valuable, is seeing angels with disabilities this season. We've got Seraquiel for one thing, but there are also angels in the Job scene who, very clearly have disabilities as well. So it's things like that too. It's seeing characters who, any gender, non-binary characters, trans characters, all of these things that are incredibly, incredibly refreshing. And I've talked about that before as well. I think the inclusion of, these non-binary characters like Muriel, like, Beelzebub being non-binary as well. I think that's very refreshing. I think it's very refreshing that this is a story that revolves around religious themes, but characters being queer are not, like, it's not an issue. There's a whole scene in season 2 where Aziraphale reveals that he's trying to get Nina and Maggie to fall in love, and he used a miracle to do it. And at no point is heaven bothered by the fact that it's 2 women he's trying to get together. And I think even Neil says, like, they don't really understand it enough to care, But I think that's kind of the best case scenario a lot of queer people could hope for when it comes to portrayals of, angels and religion in shows. And again, that's another reason that I think this is kind of healing a lot of religious trauma for me personally, is I think it's very refreshing to see a show where, there are these characters who are openly trans and queer and gay and lesbian and, everything else under the sun. And it's not an issue. There's no point where that is something that they care about. You know what I mean? I don't know that had this show come out sooner, we would have gotten this. You know what I mean? And it's not to say that it wasn't something that Neil always intended, or that it's, I know some people do like to say that it's like fan service or whatever. But I just think sometimes things like this weren't possible in another time. It's only recently that things like this are possible, and things like this, shows like this can exist in this way. And I've seen so many articles where people talk about how, there is something about Crowley and Nazirville as a couple that just speaks to so many different people in the community. There's something about it that makes you root for them in such a profound way. And again, I don't know that this could have existed in another time. You know what I mean? Like, if it had come out any time before when it did, I don't know that it would have been this.
Editing Cissa here. One thing I do know is how diverse this cast is. It's actually kind of amazing. It's nowhere near perfect, of course. There's a lot of times where that's not the case, but I appreciate how many characters of color we get to see in this show. I appreciate how much we get to see characters that are not just cishet white men. I appreciate that there is this inclusion that has been added throughout the seasons, and it seems to be continuing to add more as the seasons go on. And I like all of the diversity that we have seen so far in the show. I just think it's very, very important to talk about. I wanted to make sure that I made it a point to bring it up in the video here.
Ultimately, one of my favorite things and the best thing is that this is very much an unapologetically queer show. That is something that I greatly appreciate about this show. I've said that multiple times. I think shows like this that are very unapologetic about what they are something that is very, very necessary, and something that I hope we get to see more of, because I think in general things like this are very, very important. And it's also very, very refreshing to see, and that visibility means something to a lot of people, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful to Neil for it specifically, especially as an author and a creator who has very explicitly said, what this story is, but not just that, where he stands on these things. Because we have seen some authors who wish to, let's say, take credit for visibility that did not exist in their work ever, and yet kind of retcon it into their work, and then go so far as to say that, act like they're very much an ally, and then later come out and show their true colors with regards to that. I would say it's very refreshing in that respect as well, to have a writer who is not that way. And, I'm not going to put anyone in a position where I'm going to say that they're an idol or anything like that. I am not going to go down that road. I will say it's just refreshing to have someone who is an ally, who is proving that they're an ally, who, has gone to great lengths to stand up for the whole community. And it isn't something that is just coming out now and like trying to backtrack. It's something that's very clearly in the text. It's not subtext. It is very clear and very evident, I think. And that's very, very important. I'm having a lot of fun making these videos. I'm so, so grateful to everyone who has watched these videos, to everyone who has liked my videos, who is enjoying the content that I'm making. I'm so, so grateful to everyone who comments, to everyone who subscribes. You have no idea how much this means to me, because I love making this content. I have been having so much fun in this community. I've been having so much fun with every video that I'm making right now. I'm so, so grateful. I cannot wait to keep making these videos and keep talking about all of this stuff. So I hope that you will join me for another one very, very soon. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to comment down below. Tell me your favorite things when it comes to the visibility in this show. Tell me the things that are the most cathartic to you that you didn't expect that maybe I forgot. I tried to include as many things as I could, but I know there are probably some things that maybe, just didn't occur to me, because a lot of these things were kind of specific to me. That is kind of the nature of having a YouTube channel. It's very specific to me. Sorry, I know it's selfish, but it's all about me on this channel. If you want it to be all about you, you can have your own channel. And of course, please subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate having you here. It does mean a lot. I am so close to 1,000, which is a very exciting milestone for me. And it's been a long time coming. I've been doing this since 2017. So the fact that I am now almost there is so cool. Very grateful. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Thank you to everyone who has watched my videos. And for all of the appreciation. And if you like this video and you enjoy my content, please feel free to subscribe to my Patreon, my behind the scenes members only channel, where you can get all kinds of fun extra goodies. You can find that at patreon.com/NarcissisDeville. And again, like I said, I make new Good Omens content every Tuesday, whether you like it or not. And until next time, stay devilish and see you next Tuesday. I do actually really like this background. I do think it's very nice. I'm not gonna lie. It's very spoopy. I can't see myself well, but I can see myself just enough.